Legends and Lattes. Boy, what a massive disappointment. I mean, a massive disappointment. A lot of people hype this book up, and I just don't see the appeal. I'll start off with the content, then I'll go to the summary, and then I'll just kind of give my thoughts on the book as a whole. Content. Language. There is not a whole lot of language, but when they cuss big. Sex and sexual content. There is no graphic sexual content. I think there's only one scene where two of the characters kiss. There's LGBT themes, if you have a problem with that, or if you don't have a problem with that, or if you look for that. The next up is violence. Violence is not really that big of a thing in the book. You're not going to find anything overly graphic. They're just going to be like, that's gross. Like, it's not really going to be a thing. Religion is non-existent. It's just not really factors into the story at all. And it's not really fleshed out either because it's such a short book. Okay, so now on to the summary. The summary is there's a orc who is an adventurer, and she gets tired of adventuring, so she wants to open up a coffee shop, and that's pretty much it. There's no like greater depth to it there. Now let me give you my general ideas about the book. The author, you can tell, has like no concept of finances like at all. It really doesn't know how long it takes for people to travel to different places, doesn't understand supply and demand, doesn't understand construction, doesn't understand that when you repurpose a building, there is still residual dust in the walls that will flavor things. Things like that weren't even talked about. So reusing a livery for a coffee shop really wasn't even understood to be disgusting. But we'll skip past that. There's a spoiler here. Spoiler. There is her coffee shop burns down, and there really is no big like whoop about it. Money just kind of appears out of nowhere, and it's able to be fixed just easy. Now I understand the idea of not really having a high stakes, like just a relaxing read. I get that, but if all of your problems can be magically whisked away, it kind of makes it where there's no investment into the story. There has to be something. Now, obviously, I'm not saying it had to be a stressful read, or he had to write a stressful scene. That's what I'm talking about. If you want something that's like no stress, that's totally okay. That's fine. But there has to be a way to resolve the issue without just magically resolving it, right? Like in the Disney cartoon Soul, I think, yeah, Soul, where the sacrifice doesn't really mean anything, and the cat just comes back to life because why not? There's no weight to anything, and it's okay to have a comfort thing where things aren't stressful, but why have the business burn down if you're just going to turn around and make it like the money just appears out of nowhere, it's not a big deal, and you just move on. It's like, oh, okay. You can just kind of see that the author has no idea about actually starting a business and what that looks like, and just the intricacies about it. They tried to, but they really just had no idea. Characters. The characters are not really interesting. The only one that is kind of interesting is Viv, who is the main orc, the main character, and that's it. The author's political viewpoints can very much so be seen in the story. For instance, this is neither here nor there. I'm not trying to, whatever, but you can just tell the main character wants to give up her sword and won't even use it to defend herself. Obviously, a gun control thing there. Obviously, this is the LGBT content, I should say. I'm one of those people who I have no problem with gay characters being in stories, and no problem with that. I just have a problem with when you put characters in where you're just trying to get across your political viewpoints, or that kind of stuff. But then I have a problem with this. Like, well, hold on, pause. I'm not behind that. Once again, that's my own opinion. You don't have to agree with me on that. And then you can also see his political viewpoints in that there are no strong male characters whatsoever. I guess that'd be toxic. You can have a strong female character and somehow that's not toxic. But, a strong male character is toxic, I'm guessing. There are none in here. Whatever. Maybe he's just trying to cater to people's kind of current disliking for strong males. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. And then the way that things are just overly dramatic and touchy-feely and just kind of, if you know what I'm saying, then you know what I'm saying. The author is from the Pacific Northwest. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's no other way I can say it. It's meant to be what's called a comfort read, which I understand and I totally get, but they're all pretty predictable, okay? Let me just kind of summarize every comfort read that there is, or comfort fantasy read that there is. Two gay characters do this thing, they face opposition, oh no, what are they going to do? And then it magically resolves itself and that's it. Then throw in a bunch of nostalgic words, right? So if you say things like the smell of coffee, the sound of the espresso machine, if you just say it enough times, somehow it's going to give somebody, I guess, comfort. Or how many times it's described as holding a warm cup of coffee in your hands. It's like, I get it. I got it. Like you're trying to hit all the check marks for this to be a comfort thing. And maybe other people might like this, but I didn't. I found it kind of tedious and stupid and not really, I felt like I was wasting my time. Like I just couldn't wait to get through it. And then at the very end, there's another story, which I had zero interest in reading because I was just like, why? This story was already short. I don't need another short story about something that really didn't need to be elaborated on. Like, you know, when Disney gives out a prequel, when you really didn't want that, you had no interest in it, and they do it anyways. And in that way, this book really did seem like a Disney movie. The modern Disney movies. I'm not talking about like the classic ones. I'm talking about the modern ones, you know, which I understand trying to hit certain demographics, but there comes a certain point when you're trying too hard, and you should just write a story that's enjoyable without trying to hit off every single check mark. I don't know. Once again, if you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. I like ideas. I like original ideas. I don't like when people try to preach at me with their books. There's a reason why Christian movies tend to suck. And the reason is because they don't have good actors. They don't have a good story. But they get off to religious people with this whole, hey, it's religious, so it's not going to have cussing and that kind of stuff. And the religious people all say, well, thank God, finally a movie I can watch with my family and not be embarrassed about. But then you watch it and you're still a little bit embarrassed because the acting's so bad and there's no, like, nothing is subtle, and you know, it just feels like you're watching a dramatized sermon. That's why Christian movies suck. Well, so now what we're doing is we're getting modern, I guess you would call them liberal movies, I guess, and they're trying to do the same thing. And they're doing the exact same thing that the Christian movies did. You've got poor actors with just a poor script, poor. I hope you see what I'm saying here. This book just did not. It just was real surface, and there was no depth to it. You can have something be a comfort without it being surface, and you can have something being comfort with it being low stakes. Like I said with the business, you didn't have to burn it down if you were just going to make it magically reappear. Have lower stakes, and then where they don't have to be insignificant because they're just magically resolved. Then there's the obvious issues about things being like overhyped, and whenever something's hyped up, I go in with such high expectations, and I mean, obviously hyped up, that makes sense, but sometimes it's just, you go in and you just read it and you think, how is this such a big thing? How do people actually like this? I just didn't really feel like the story had depth, the characters didn't have depth, it just didn't really seem to go anywhere, and didn't really seem to have a purpose or even need to be written. So those are my thoughts on it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Post your thoughts in the comments below.